Hello, everyone, and welcome to StudyTravel TV Live, a show of news, statistics, and opinion. I'm Bethan Norris, Senior Editor of StudyTravel Magazine.
Hello, everyone. I'm Nicola Hancock, Editor of StudyTravel Magazine. And before we get started, for the best viewing experience, please put the call in side-by-side speaker view. You will see an icon in the top right corner where you can select the view.
We're delighted to welcome you all today to the latest episode of StudyTravel TV Live. In today's broadcast, we'll start with a news story, and then we'll be joined by our guest this week, Oscar Porras, President of Aseproce and Managing Director of Midleton School in Spain, and Eleri Maitland, Spokesperson for Groupement FLE and owner of French in Normandy.
We'll then introduce a few more stories as we go through the show. If you have any questions for the presenters or guest speakers or comments on any of the stories, please do post them in the chat box and we will read them out at the end. A big thank you to the sponsor of this episode, Londonist.
Okay then, let's have a look at our first story this week. As the language travel industry begins to recover and look ahead to a more positive year in 2022, homestay capacity has emerged as a major issue in some of the key destinations.
One of our guests today, Oscar, made a presentation about opportunities and challenges in the Spanish market at the recent StudyTravel FLE Spain In-Person Plus event, where homestay, particularly in the UK and Ireland, was one of the main topics discussed. In this month's edition of StudyTravel Magazine, Languages Canada has also cited issues with homestay.
Reasons given for a lack of supply include that homestay families may be using previous spare rooms as a home office due to COVID-19, that they may have more disposable income from not travelling or commuting during the pandemic, and a reluctance to host students because of concerns over COVID-19 and vaccination status.
So at this point, we'd like to introduce our guests, Oscar and Eleri. Hello. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Hey, hello.
Hello, how are you?
Welcome. So Oscar, we'll start with you. This issue probably affects Spain more than most, given the number of young learners and preference for homestay. To give an example, in our global agency survey on 2019 business, 56% of language students chose homestay accommodation. So for Spanish agents in that survey, it was more than 70%. So what are the issues for Spanish agencies? And do you think the situation will improve as the year progresses?
Well, I hope it improves. It's true that this is something very worrying for all the Spanish agencies at the moment, because the feedback that we get from the schools, from the language schools, and from our partners in UK and Ireland is that the situation of host families is difficult, especially in Ireland, where they are expecting probably 70% of the host families they had before the pandemic. And obviously this is limiting some way the capacity also of the agencies, because they don't want to sell too many courses if they don't have a certain guarantee that there will be a homestay for every student. So it's true that it's worrying, but I think that it is progressing well, because I think that the language schools are doing a great job convincing host families. It's true that, as you said before, that one of the reasons is that they have converted in some of the cases the rooms that they had for students into an office, because they are working now from home. But I think that as the situation improves and COVID is gone, hopefully soon, the situation will improve. I hope so.
Okay, thank you. And Eleri, let's look at the situation in France for homestay capacity. Given we won't be back to pre-pandemic levels of students in 2022, do you have estimates for the percentage drop in French host family availability? And will that perhaps be enough for the student cohort this year?
It hasn't been an issue so far on our radar. I've followed the story because obviously as Groupement FLE spokesman, I'm part of Gala Felk. But this hasn't been something that's been bothering us. In fact, if I speak from a French in Normandy point of view, we have host families all the time saying, oh, can we have students? Are things getting better? So I think from a French perspective, I may be wrong, but I would think I would have heard about it from one of my colleagues or from our own experience. It seems to be that host families are raring to go in France. So There's a solution for you, Oscar. Just send them all to us.
Yeah, absolutely. We will.
So, Oscar, at the debate that you led at StudyTravel FLE Spain, some of the issues raised were whether Spanish families would accept their child being housed with another Spanish speaker for this year at least. So will families accept this, or perhaps look at residential programs or other destinations if homestay is an issue?
I think that they will eventually will accept it, and they will have to accept it, because if there isn't any other way to do it. I said in my presentation in Malaga that there is this romantic idea that the parents have in Spain about their kids going into a host family and becoming in 3 weeks part of the family, and keeping this long-term relation for the rest of their lives, no? And it's something that we have to explain them that it's not that easy, and that the situation is not the same as before the pandemic. So that the capacity is limited, not in France, but in other places, and that if they want their kids to be in a host family, that they will probably have to stay with another Spanish speaker. Sometimes I think this is something very specific from Spain, because there are other countries like Italy where they go in two to the host families, and that's not an issue. So it's something cultural here in Spain, that they think that because there are two students of the same nationality, they will be speaking between themselves and they will not be communicating with the host family. And so there is this thing that well, that happens in Spain, but I think that eventually they will accept it. It's something that is gonna take us a little bit of time, but we will persuade them.
Okay, and Eleri, I gather that homestay accommodation in some destinations was one of the issues discussed at the recent talks between peak agency and school association bodies FELCA and GALA. Is there anything that can be done at an association level to address this shortage, do you think?
Well, I can only speak for the French Association, obviously, for Groupement FLE, the association that I'm part of. And as I say, we just haven't had this hasn't been as a topic for discussion. So we've been following it closely, obviously, and I'm interested to hear, and I agree with Oscar, because as a school owner, we have requests from Italy, and it's always, oh, please, can they come in 2s or 3s? So it does seem to be something that's quite particular to Spain and to certain markets, but I think it's just going to something that will play out over this year, and perhaps as COVID retreats into our memories, perhaps we will see a bit clearer.
Okay, great. Right, well, we'll move on to our next story, and it's next to Australia, which has just announced that it will reopen to fully vaccinated travellers from February 21st, meaning that visitor visa holders will be able to enter the country. It is a move welcomed by the Aseproce English language sector, where traditionally 20 to 30% of enrolled students are on a visitor visa.
Australia reopened to student visa holders and working holiday makers on December the 15th, and the Minister for Immigration, Alex Hawke, reported that around 56,000 international students had entered the country between late November and the end of January. He also said that 50,000 new student visa applications had been lodged offshore since the borders reopened to students.
However, the scale of losses for the sector were also highlighted in data from the Australian Bureau of Statistics, which calculated that education exports declined to $22.5 billion in 2021, compared with $31.7 billion the year before, and a record level of $40.3 billion prior to the pandemic in 2019.
So, Oscar, prior to COVID-19, Spain was actually a top 10 source market for Australian English language schools, with 9 straight years of growth up to 2019, according to English Australia data. Do you think that Spain can get back into the Aussie top 10, given that the student and working holiday announcements, and more recently, the visitor visa route?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the Australian market for us will recover very quickly. I think that also we need to take into consideration that, and this is what we think from Aseproce, that the countries that they will recover earlier will be those that they are closer to Spain. So I think that Europe will recover much faster than other countries like Canada, United States, or Australia, that it's far away from Spain. But I think that this is excellent news, and I think that all those students that they've been waiting for so long to travel to Australia, now they have the green flag to go there, and they are willing to do it. And we are noticing an increase in the number of leads that we get from students that they are really wanting to go to Australia. So this is the right time to go there.
Great. And schools in Australia will no doubt be keen that this flow of students continues after so long without new students. The ELICOS sector has secured some concessions from government in terms of grants for developing online courses and exemptions from regulatory fees, but job support subsidies ceased last year, and English Australia has reported continued job losses in the sector.
So, Eleri, Groupement FLE has been involved in lobbying the French government for support, and the language sector was given a protected status, a nice achievement for Groupement FLE. Have you found that protected status has helped your members as much as you'd hoped, and that students have retained their staff and are in a good place to restart this year?
Well, we weren't alone. To be fair, we weren't alone. Obviously, we were a motor in making sure that the lobbying was successful, but we also have to thank France Education International, who was very active as well in supporting the request from French language schools. It was a super achievement because it meant that we had access to what they call the Fonds de Solidarité, which meant we had grants compared to the losses that all the schools were making. And yes, it has been a protective factor, and it continues to be so. Recently, new aid was announced by the French government. So, for example, you could have help with your fixed costs, and we still are part of that protective sector. And we hope that we'll get some things like the cost of the tax we have to pay on our workforce. As you know, in France, it's very expensive to employ people. You pay 50% more in social security, and there will be help with that. And we're not quite sure how long this help is going to last, but we intend to keep in touch with all the people that we're lobbying, and hope that our French school members will be able to benefit for as long as possible from any help that we can get.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let's take another story. New Zealand has announced more detail on its reopening to international travel with a 5-stage plan. Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern confirmed that a cohort of up to 5,000 students may be allowed in from April the 12th as part of stage 3 and in time for semester 2. Wider re-entry for student visa holders will recommence in the last stage, expected in October.
The working holiday stream will reopen in the second step in March, and student visas who don't require a visa will be allowed in from July. Language School Association English New Zealand welcomed this move, and Chair Darren Conway told StudyTravel Magazine that visitor students, particularly from Korea and Japan, are the bread and butter of the industry. Universities New Zealand welcomed the additional clarity of the steps, but said 5,000 students was a small fraction of the number of students waiting to come.
Meanwhile, in Japan, the risk of prolonged closure without an entry date was laid bare in a survey of 3,115 students locked out, conducted by the Association to Open the Door to Study in Japan lobbying group, led by Gogo Nihon, an inbound agency. Almost 4 in 10 respondents said that they would cancel their Japan study plans if they cannot enter by April.
Among those that would cancel, 54% said a confirmed timeline would make them change their mind. The survey also outlined some very concerning impacts on the mental health and financial situations of students who've been waiting more than half of whom have been waiting more than a year to enter.
Oscar, there must be quite a few of your Spanish clients who have had to delay their study travel plans. So which countries have given you the most information with confirmed timelines, and so helped you and your clients to make plans for 2022?
Well, yeah, absolutely. We've had a lot of students that they have had to delay their plans, especially groups, school groups that they were planning to travel before the pandemic, before the outbreak of the pandemic. And that has been difficult to plan because like the regulation in every country has been changing constantly. So in UK and Ireland, there has been changes all the time. So I think that what has been key during this time is flexibility. Like the schools, in most of the cases, they've been very flexible. There are a few that they haven't been that flexible, but I have to say that 90% of the schools, they have made credit notes or they have refunded fully, and they have given alternatives to the students to arrive in their countries. We find difficult to convince the students to defer the course when we don't know when that is going to take place. So when we don't have a timeline or we don't have a specific date. So I think that's quite of an issue. But having said that, people have been really understandable, and they know that we all had so much uncertainty and that we didn't know if the regulations in every country would change, and they've been flexible. So I would say that in general, they've been quite good, all the countries and all the schools. Well, all the countries, I wouldn't say the countries because the governments, they've been giving us all a lot of uncertainty, but I have to say that the school owners and school directors have been very flexible, and they've been on top of us, like giving us information and options for the students to travel.
Okay, so Eleri and Oscar, you're both located in Europe and as such have been relatively lucky compared to businesses in the Asia Pacific region, as borders largely remained open for most of the pandemic, at least internally within Europe. But Eleri, have you witnessed these kinds of impacts on students' mental health and finances from not being able to travel and pursue their study plans?
Sorry, I didn't catch that last bit, Bethan. Could you just...
So have you witnessed these kind of impacts on students' mental health and finances and from not being able to travel and pursue their study plans?
Well, those students that haven't been able to come to us, no, I haven't seen how that's affected them, but I have to say I'm very happy that our Asian market has held up. Personally, in French Normandy, we've had a lot of students still incoming from Japan and China and Vietnam. So we've been very lucky, and I haven't actually seen any of this in terms of our own students. So that's a big plus for us. How it's been for people who've been locked out, Japanese students being locked out and so forth. It's been part of this terrible pandemic that we couldn't predict, could we? And I agree with Oscar that the key word for everybody during this time has been flexibility, and it's go with the flow and see what happens day by day and adapt as fast as you can.
Oscar, you send Spanish students abroad and also welcome students to summer camps in Spain. So have the Spanish authorities kept to their forecasted timelines for visitors to Spain as well as you would have liked?
Yeah, I have to say that they've been quite good with that. There has been less restrictions. We have to think that Spain, well, our economy lives very much of tourism, and our borders, they need to be open as much as we can because we live of that. So in what respects to our summer camps in Spain, I think that the government has been very good. Obviously, there has been restrictions in terms of capacity, so they reduced the capacity, and some of the measures that we had to implement to to avoid infection and students taking COVID and all that. It's been crazy, no? Because when you've got a place with so many kids all around and they have to be wearing their face mask almost 24 hours a day, and you need to test them and all that. But I think that it's been successful, and what we hope for this 2022 is that we won't have that many problems, and everything will be, I suppose, more relaxed, and there will be less restrictions also for the summer camps with higher capacity. And answering your question, yes, I think that the Spanish authorities have kept their forecast timelines, and they've been good. I have to say.
Okay, thank you. And we've talked about Japan's inbound restrictions, but of course, COVID affects their outbound market as well. Students can travel from Japan, but may face strict quarantine measures on their return. Eleri, Japan was a prominent source market for French in Normandy. Given the current regulations, is Japan likely to rebound quickly as a student supply market? And if not, do you have ideas for markets that could replace them in the short term?
Well, as I said, we've been very lucky personally, and I thank all our partners in Japan because we've still had a good Japanese intake. I think what Oscar said just now about relaxation, and that this year, this summer is going to be a little bit different in the sense, if you think back 2020, pandemic happening, people a bit eggshell in that first summer. 2021 we thought it would be better, but then we had the vaccination debate, should you, shouldn't you. People got a little bit worried about traveling, I think, but now where vaccination has become absolutely normal in inverted commas and most people are vaccinated, I think this year there will begin to be a bigger growth, and not limited just to Europe. I see that we're getting Brazilians and Colombians coming back online with dates starting. You know, we've had some entries just recently in February, and there's more entry planned every single month now until June, July. So I think the situation is changing, not just government regulations, but in people's minds as well. And there is a pent-up demand for travel, and that we'll see a positive outcome across the board. I'm always positive anyway. I try to be. So
we need to be positive.
We do.
Okay, on to another story. ELT provider Atlas Language School, which has year-round centres in Ireland and Malta, has announced that it will offer an Atlas Junior Italy programme this year, with 2 residential summer camps offered in the north of Italy.
The residential programmes, in partnership with local provider Champions Camp, follow a successful pilot scheme during 2021. Nico Dowling, director of Atlas, said that the 9 to 15-year age range is slightly younger than they usually offer for Atlas Junior, and that he hopes this will be a stepping stone to future study trips for younger learners.
We heard of a few in-country collaborations during the last 2 years when travel was complicated, often between a language provider and a local agency. Clearly, Atlas sees a future in this despite borders reopening, and actually this was our most read news story of the last 7 days, suggesting some interest. So do you expect to see more of these types of collaborative programs, Oscar, going forward?
Well, I expect anything from Nico because he's an entrepreneur. And and I know Nico Dowling for 12 years or 15 years. We've been working together very closely for many years, and I'm not surprised about this. I'm a little bit angry because he didn't tell me this, and I only knew this because of the StudyTravel Magazine, but as I love him so much, I forgive him. And so yes, I think that it's great, and Eleri also will probably tell now her own experience with this, but I think it's a fantastic partnership. It's true that students of that age, that they are a little bit younger, families, especially in Southern Europe, they are more worried about letting them go. And this is like, yes, like a stepping stone for those students. And I think it is fantastic because they start, well, getting a taste of what it's like to be in a program that probably is not far from their house, but it's like the first step. I think it is absolutely fantastic, and this shows that agencies and language schools, we can work closely and we can do a lot of things together, and I love this idea. I absolutely love it.
Okay, Eleri, you were developing French junior camps in Andorra with a Spanish agency prior to the pandemic. Is this something you will look to return to and expand upon in the future?
Well, we ran it last year quite successfully, so I think I agree again with Oscar. Hey, Oscar, you always say the things I want to say first. I think he's right. Stepping stone is a good analogy, because people have been worried. Nobody wants to be ill abroad and away from home. There's, you know, it's a horrible thought, isn't it? So not too far, but there's that first little step towards leaving, going somewhere else, having that experience in an international setting. Yeah, I think this will be developing, and I think I've seen that coming through in requests I've had for Erasmus, for English, to do our teacher training programs, which we deliver in French, but to do them in English, because people aren't necessarily willing to travel outside of Europe. So I think there's going to be lots of inventive and creative solutions to all these new little markets sort of bubbling away as we come out of this rather difficult and trying period.
So watch this space, in other words.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, and we'll finish with a little announcement that voting for the Study Travel Star Awards 2022 is now officially open. You can see the address on the screen here. The voting period runs until April the 22nd.
The unique partner voted awards celebrate excellence in performance in the study travel industry, with 24 categories covering language schools, agencies, vocational colleges, service providers and industry associations.
Winners will be announced at a special gala dinner in London in September, held during the ST Alpha UK In-Person Plus 2022 conference.
So Oscar Aseproce joined the Superstar Hall of Fame last year after winning the ST Star Agency Association category for a 5th time. You and Juan Manuel put a lot of time into the association, so congratulations to you both. Are there others you'd like to mention, part of the association, who made this success possible?
Absolutely, and I have to say that we've got 3 staff members in Aseproce that they are absolutely great. They are Marta, that she's the boss at the Aseproce office, Cristina, that is her assistant, and Maria, that is our lawyer. So they are, for us, very important because they are who run the day-to-day of the association. And although we put a lot of effort, they are working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to keep this association where it is at the moment. I think our association is quite different to other national associations because we have, like, I think, a high budget that we spend in different activities, and we need to keep a staff at the office to keep this running. So we are grateful to these 3, and obviously to all our members that they support us a lot. They are quite active, so every time we ask our members, we've got at the moment 60 members, and every time we call them for a meeting or we ask them help with something, they are super proactive, and this helps a lot in promoting the association and making new activities for them.
Thank you.
Okay, and Eleri, you were one of the very first superstars inducted into 2012 for ST Star French Language School. I know that this year you're campaigning hard on behalf of Groupement FLE. Why do you think agents should vote for this French School Association?
Well, why not? As we say in France, so why not? I think we should try and promote Groupement FLE because I understand our industry is all about English. It's the big language. But there are lots of other languages too. And it's very rare to see somebody from outside that English market taking an award. So I'll have to talk to Oscar about how to market for us. But it would be lovely. Any agencies listening, please do vote for Groupement FLE because we've done such a lot for our members while we've been all suffering from this terrible pandemic. The list is endless. I won't go on and on about it, but we're young, we're dynamic, we're active, and just great. And our members love us, and that's why the association is growing all the time. We just had another 2 members join this week, and I think that's the proof, isn't it? That the association is doing things for its members, and so that's a good reason to vote for us. And Oscar, contact me after this and give me all your tips.
Okay.
Brilliant. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing you both in person in September for the ceremony. So that brings us up to date with all the latest news in the industry. At this point, we'll completely open up to the audience to see if there are any questions for our guests or the Study Travel team. These can be on any of the stories or topics we've discussed this afternoon. So do please make sure that your organisation and your name are in your Zoom name or in the question. So whilst we're waiting to see if anyone's going to ask any questions for our guests, I'll ask you what's on the horizon, perhaps for your respective associations. So, Oscar, do you want to go first? What have you got planned for 2022?
Well, we've got a lot of things that we are planning. One of the most exciting things that we are finishing at the moment, it's a group leader training course that we've been preparing for the last couple of years. We had to stop because of the pandemic, but we started again after the summer, and we will be launching that in our next AGM, which will be in Oviedo at the end of this month. So basically it will be online, and it will be for like a certificate that we will give to group leaders that they want to travel with minors to different countries. And before this, we didn't have like a specific training. So every agency was explaining to their group leaders what they thought it was important. So with this new online course, it's fantastic because it's all the information that they need, very complete, and it's bespoke for the group leaders that they are traveling with the students. So I think this is something very unique that we hope that we can share with other agency associations in the future. We obviously want to try and test it first with our group leaders, but we think this is going to be make a huge difference, and that group leaders will be much more prepared when traveling with the students, and also language schools will appreciate that because the group leaders will be more independent and will be doing a better job.
Brilliant, thank you. And Eleri, what's on the table for Groupement FLE going forward?
Well, more training, and that's a great idea, Oscar. I think there's something for us to work on there. We've done a lot of training for our members, offering free courses, including courses such as becoming a disabled. In the French quality system, you have to have someone in your school who's a référent, who's the contact for disability. And that's a legal requirement. So we've been very active in providing a service for the members, and we'll be developing that throughout this year.
Wonderful.
Okay, thank you. It doesn't look like we've got any questions. So
I think we did really well. If they don't have any questions, that we did really well.
Okay, well, I think that brings us to the end of this week's StudyTravel TV Live.
Our next episode will be on the 23rd of February at the same time of 4 p.m. GMT. Visit the StudyTravel TV Live page on the StudyTravel Network, which you can find under the magazine section in the menu, where we'll be announcing the guest speakers for the next broadcast, as well as a recording of this episode and past episodes.
So that's it for today. We'd like to say a big thank you to our special guests. Oscar, thank you for your time and insights today.
Thank you very much. I'm delighted to participate in this. So thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you.
And Eleri, thank you for joining us too and sharing your thoughts. We look
thank you.
forward...
I'd like to say the same thing as Oscar, but you see, again, he said it in front of
me. You are a star.
Groupement FLE is really, really happy to be part of StudyTravel, and thank you for everything. Thank you for inviting us, and à bientôt.
Thank you. And thank you again to our sponsor this week, Londonist. And thanks everybody for watching. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Au revoir.